This is the Liberty Beacon Media Network, and this is the ManTalk show. I can't think of two people I'd rather be on with as we launch this network than to my right, facing north, way down under in New Zealand. He is probably one of the best-known personalities, a videographer and activist, a man who goes out into the streets and deals with the people and deals with real issues. Mr. Vincent Eastwood is here. Vinny, good evening.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And to my north, facing north, straight on, he is, he is above all else, I guess we would say, the sensei.
We have a clip, don't we, Randy?
We're in this dojo!
Joe, we don't even know what a dojo is.
There's no mercy in this dojo!
Joe, why don't you take it down a notch?
No mercy!
Yes, it is indeed. Mr. David Whitehead from Canada, good evening and welcome.
Hey guys, hello everybody. That's awesome. Way to intro there, Randy. That's a great clip. And there is no mercy in my dojo. Well, maybe a little bit of mercy, but not for me anyways. And I'm very happy to have been able to make this time slot. And Randy, thanks for hosting this on your show. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is the first week of this media project that we formed with the people at the Liberty Beacon, and it's been an interesting experiment along the way. It's new media raw. We're just kind of we're winging it out there right now, and as we go into the night show, I know we're going to cover a lot of ground. Vinny, right now, I would have to say that you may be one of the most controversial figures in terms of what's been going on with you, given your coverage of the elections in New Zealand and the subsequent takedown of your YouTube channel. Give us an update on that.
Well, there really is not a whole lot to update, but I made a 6-minute video about the Prime Minister John Key's past, his banking connections, what he plans to do with the country, as he's admitted, his association with basically the worst banking criminal scum in history were his mentors. Let me put it like that. And it's unequivocal. And in 6 minutes, you realize who this guy is. And it was so effective, and it was starting to go viral, that after the 6th day, rather biblically, my YouTube channel was put to rest permanently, without warning, because of that video alone. And there were thousands of videos on that YouTube channel, 3.5 million hits, 16,000 subscribers. I was the most subscribed YouTube channel to put out news in New Zealand, even larger than the mainstream media's YouTube channel variants, the largest one at the time being New Zealand Herald, who hadn't even gotten past the 10,000 subscriber mark, and they've been around for 150 years that media entity has, as well as being the country's #1 website. And I beat them on YouTube by myself. Of course, with the help of guests to fill out content and my donors and subscribers who just basically pay my day-to-day living expenses so that I can keep serving humanity instead of, well, I can't get a job because I'm employer phobic. It's a made-up it's a mental illness that I made up, just like all other mental illnesses, of course, where I have a fear of gainful employment. And basically a non-submission to authority. And it's actually a very real thing. Even my best friend Jono, who actually just incidentally came round here about an hour ago, offered me a job selling insulation, and I went in and I did the interview and it was all fine. I mean, but the night before going into work, I actually had a panic attack just lying there in bed, like the hyperventilating and everything really freaked my wife out. And I think that was the day that I realized that there is no going back. I cannot go back and do a normal job. I can't live an ordinary life anymore. I am here merely as a servant for those in my nation and, of course, countries around the world who expose scumbaggery by hook or by crook and ensure the survival of the human race, or at least they play their part. And there's an old saying, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And that something that I can do is channel information and allow people to listen from the horse's mouth directly to what's going on both in New Zealand and around the world. Now, in order for my YouTube channel to be deleted, that's basically the work of my 20s. This is actually the longest I've ever been in any kind of job. And of course, it's a self-perpetuating mystery to me why I haven't died yet. But the YouTube channel getting deleted was such a big kind of emotional blow to me, and I thought I was handling it rather well. But a couple of weeks passed, and it actually started to take its toll on me, because not only had I lost the work of my 20s, and I'm just about to turn 30 at the end of this year, so, watch out. And it kind of, I would say, I actually didn't really feel that bad about it initially. What I felt initially wasn't loss, it was freedom. I felt as though I had always been editing videos and putting them up on a constant basis and answering comments and that kind of thing, and heavily involved in it. When it got deleted, I no longer had any of those responsibilities because I couldn't fulfill them. And what it allowed me to do is to retool, more or less. And so, other than that, I did try to email YouTube and ask others to email them on my behalf, all of which received automatic replies saying this email for this particular YouTube channel has been banned, and if you want it to be unbanned, then you need to sign into your banned YouTube channel with your banned email and then send us an email that's banned from your banned YouTube channel to us in order to get us to reply. It's like the ultimate catch-22. You just can't make this stuff up. You just can't win if you try. And so I've been asking other radio show hosts and YouTubers to upload their own videos and their own and make mentions of it on broadcast in order to bring public awareness to this, because I am aware that a number of people like Mark Dice, for instance, and of course Alex Jones, have had their YouTube channels deleted in the past and probably under similar circumstances, and they've managed to get their channels put back up. Now, unfortunately, because I can't contact YouTube because they won't let me, or anyone else, it means that it has to be the court of a public opinion that actually reaches YouTube, and I cannot do that by myself, especially without a YouTube channel. That said, I had two YouTube channels. One that I hadn't touched in 5 years, which I had primarily used for my initial cannabis activism and also to make dance party videos for people. Like back when I was first starting, they paid me like $50 to film the whole night and edit a video. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me fed. And so what I've done is I've got my second slave computer next to my main that is constantly uploading now hundreds of videos at a time. I had 5 full hard drives that are ranging between 4 and 2 terabyte hard drives that took about a month to get all the videos of those on. And then I thought to myself, there has to be a few more hard drives. So I look in my closet, and sure enough, I found another 6 hard drives, and so now they're uploading, and goodness knows how long that's going to take. So you're talking about probably one of the largest bodies of work comparable to anybody else's program catalog on YouTube, more or less. Thousands upon thousands of videos, many of them well over an hour in length, with celebrities like Tila Tequila and top researchers, David Icke and what's his name, Foster Gamble from the Thrive Movement, and John Perkins, and all of these kind of things were up there, and they no longer are. So yeah, I just need people's help and support to appeal to YouTube to reinstate that old channel, because it was quite depressing looking through all these uploads, and where previously I would see 20,000 views or 10,000 views or something on selected videos, I now see 1 view, no views, 16 views, that kind of thing, and it's actually quite depressing.
Well, it brings to the forefront the question, we're almost now at the mercy of a few small companies on the internet as content providers. YouTube, with the flick of a switch at the behest of their cabal masters, can take down an entire channel, wipe out an entire website. And this is the threat that we now face we're now facing with new media. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. I posted this on Facebook yesterday. Gordon Duff of Veterans Today put up an article called Monsters Among Us. You see this article?
Yeah, I looked it over, Randy, and he definitely covers some very critical information for people to learn when it comes to social media and the way that it's been going, and the whole design of how it just, it's a filter for information, it's a surveillance tool, it's all these things, and thank goodness we do have people that are doing shows like what we're doing and the work that Vinny's been doing, and anybody that's listening to this show, the information that Randy's going to, I'm sure, go through regarding this article will really help sink into you why it's important to support grassroots, local radio shows, activists, community groups, community gardening groups, anything that is trying to stand outside of the parameters of this system of control that is growing rapidly. We need to support that. And so that's what I'm here to do. That's what we're all here to do. And anybody listening, I just urge you to keep researching this, keep getting more awareness spread on these issues, because I think this is a time of an incredible conflict that's actually really going on. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Randy.
Well, let me read a little bit of this article, and you can find this over at Veterans Today. I can probably post the link over to the chat as well. But Gordon Duff at Veterans Today, and people should know that Gordon Duff is one of the, he is probably singularly one of the largest private intelligence operatives in the world. He is deeply connected inside of the government, the military, and he has been running a whistleblower outfit. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Veterans Today puts out or everybody that's there, but I have to say that overall, I consider them right now to be a major organ, along with RT and a couple other networks out there that appear to be putting out pretty much the undiluted truth. This takes some cojones. Gordon Duff writing in the article Monsters Among Us. Today I want to cite 2 security threats above all. Google. Before you do,
the Veterans Today just got hacked.
What a surprise.
I just got off the phone with 2 contributors to Veterans Today, Dr. Kevin Barrett and Professor Jim Fetzer, and it was hacked directly after that article came up.
Yeah, I can't even open that article now. I'm trying.
Yeah, what a surprise.
Yeah.
So, for the record here, we'll put it on sound. Gordon Duff says, today I want to cite 2 security threats above all, Google and Wikipedia. And we all know about the wiki and what goes on with the editing and deletions over there. It would be oversimplistic to call them CIA or Mossad fronts. They are quite worse than that. Whoever owns or manages these organizations, they were created at the outset by groups within the U.S. military intelligence at the Presidio, groups long tied to the systematic control of all world media. It is not a secret that Google, Facebook, Microsoft, I'm sorry to say it, Apple, have all been in some way co-opted, if not directly funded, by these the Zionist media operatives. So,
can I also
go ahead,
add
Vinny.
something there? The CIA got involved in the early 90s in what they call venture capital funds. They are actually CIA-backed venture capital funds.
Storefront operations.
They came to the realization that they couldn't be at the head of the development of surveillance technology and new inventions and things of that nature. They simply didn't have the money or the expertise to recruit all of the world's top thinkers and get them to create things specifically for them. So they created these venture capital companies, which would go to technology conferences and things of that nature, and they would select those people who had most promising technological developments to fund, and as a result, gain control of the aforementioned technology. And one of these CIA companies gave venture capital to Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook, and there's actually quite a long list. I'm not able to really rant it off, but there you go.
Well, what I discovered was that I don't know how many people now remember the antitrust suit that was brought against Microsoft. And I mean, look, Bill Gates comes from a cabal bloodline family. The Gates family goes back to the early 20th century connections with the Rockefellers. What a surprise. But the antitrust suit that was settled by Microsoft with the U.S. Department of Justice, what many people don't realize, and I was told this by people who were working in IT at the time, and this was probably in the late 90s, that one of the backroom results of that settlement was that Microsoft basically allowed a backdoor to be installed into all of their Windows operating systems, not just commercial consumer Windows, but also all of the server networks that were then being deployed to serve, wait for it, the banking industry. And so every major technology company in some way has likely been compromised in some way, either through subversion, through funding, as Vinny was discussing, or in having their software compromised somewhere down the line by NSA hacking. Because what we know now is that the NSA itself is actually the originator of many of the viruses, bots, and spamming that's bringing down websites globally. It's all part of their cyber warfare units.
Now, there's an analogy which Ian Wishart, really good New Zealand journalist, put in his new book, Totalitaria. If you can find that, go read it. It's pretty spectacular. But it's the Kevin Bacon connection. All right. So in Hollywood, there was an article a while back saying that everybody in Hollywood, through one degree or another, whether that be 1 degree of separation all the way through to 7, is connected in some way to Kevin Bacon. For example, for example, somebody who was in a film with Kevin Bacon has a detachment of 1, whereas somebody who knows somebody who was in a film that was related to somebody else who was in a film with Kevin Bacon has a relationship of 2. And this is actually how the global intel community kind of works, is that basically they're all connected in some way with the Bacon connection. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm,
you know, that's why they tell so many porkies.
Well, and here in Canada, we know for a fact that our government here, the Harper administration, I mean, this came out even in mainstream news here in Canada, where we know that they're hiring intelligence agents or government agents to go onto social media websites, and their claim is that they're there to correct misinformation or to debunk disinformation. That's their job. So they actually admitted to creating false avatars or pseudonyms to go online and interact on the blogs, on the YouTube channels, on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff, and to actually try to disseminate information that would apparently to them stop the spread of misinformation. And we all know what that means. These guys are in bed with the intelligence agencies. Here in Canada it's CSIS, which is just another branch of the same intelligence spiderweb that essentially has control around the world. And we basically have the same surveillance program, and these governments are working in tandem with them. Some people even look at it as the fact that they're working for them. And being that our country is so far deep in the debt hole, we know that our government really isn't making much in terms of decisions. They're just following orders, and they're being assigned to these kinds of projects. Even, hardworking, well-intentioned government workers, but at the same time, they are there spying and contributing to this paranoid surveillance state. So even here in Canada, we feel the same thing going on where accounts are being hacked. My YouTube channel's had all kinds of issues. It's not been taken down, thank God, just yet. But we all know that this is going on, and I think that the more pressure we put on in the alternative media spectrum, the more the regular everyday person is going to get access to this information. Everybody I talk to now is starting to get wise to this, and they're already complaining about it and talking about it in public circles. So it means that we're doing our job, guys, and it's going well, even though we're getting opposition. And so I just say, stay in the fight, and we got to keep pushing it and putting out the information that we feel people should be able to hear.
Now, what you said there about them deliberately engaging in disinformation with the express goal of trying to prevent disinformation or to explain it, it actually falls under my two principal life assumptions. Number one, if it comes from an official source, whatever they're telling you that they're doing, they're probably doing the exact opposite. And number two, if you can't make it in your own kitchen with ingredients you can find, then it's a soft kill by a weapon.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, it's just, we all know this. We knew this when we started, the NSA, the CIA, they're the big guys. They've got the turf pretty much under wraps, Mossad, all the big companies. But you also have smaller countries, and you have the governments working in tandem with the same characters, whether it's through one organization or a certain bank or an intelligence agency that has connections with intelligence agencies in America. However you look at it, when you follow the money and when you follow the tracks, you will really, honestly, this is not theory, guys. This is something that people can go and look up, and it's becoming put in our faces. It's almost, and I was going to ask you guys this, it almost to me seems like they don't mind if we know now. They don't really mind if we know that there is this new control systems coming in, more surveillance systems coming in, more advanced technology to merge us with, and also have means of surveilling and building more of a controlled society. It's out there. They're talking openly and proudly about it, and it's as if they don't mind that we are aware that they're keeping tabs on us. You know what I mean?
Never underestimate the human capacity for hubris and just how dangerous it is to their very own agendas. And the way you're explaining it, it seems like more or less they use the exact same play cards, the exact same agencies in different countries, except they just do it in a different accent. Like the NSA in America is the NSA, but the NSA in Mexico is the NSA. And the NSA in Canada is just, it's the NSA.
Or we add an extra A. It's the NSA, eh?
Well, isn't this really the point, too, of what Snowden's been leaking out? And I know there's a lot of noise out there that says that Snowden is either disinfo or COINTELPRO, and I'd welcome your comments on that as well. But we have been leaked a lot of information at this point that indicates the depth of what the NSA has been involved with. And this came right as we became aware of this gigantic electronic data mining bunker that they've now erected out in Utah, which is just countless petabytes of data being accumulated, basically aggregating telecommunications, telephone calls, camera surveillance, GPS, satellite coordinates. The whole thing is being dumped into a gigantic data mining center where theoretically they now have the algorithms to be able to abstract this data in real time. I mean, Orwell he was a little late to the game. I mean, 1984 we weren't quite there, but by 2014 it appears as though Big Brother has got his shit together.
Well, in reality, George Orwell wrote 1984 in 1948, and he simply reversed the numbers. And it was not a date, it was merely an elaboration upon the agendas in which public relations and scumbaggery would be used in order to control people without them realizing that they're being controlled, and in fact actually support, love, and devote themselves and be willing to die for the very thing that kills and enslaves them.
And it really is prophetic when you think about it, or was it prophetic? Because Eric Arthur Blair was actually a British intelligence agent himself. And so I suspect that he knew the game a long time ago. We know that these guys are running decades ahead of the common consensus. So I guess in a way it wasn't so much prophetic as just simply a question of how it was going to come together and the timing of the whole thing.
There was one insider and he was obviously trained by Aldous Huxley and some of these other Fabians. And I don't know, there's debate as to whether or not Orwell or Blair was sympathetic to the public in a way and knew what was coming down the pipeline, but wanted to reveal it in sort of a discreet way. And there's other people that think, no, it's just all encoded and this is how they do it. They just release a certain amount of information that locks in the mindset and it locks in the agenda when it's out in the public. So they've done their job, they've let us know, and then they just carry forward with it, and we're the ones that keep looking at it and go, oh, it's not really happening, but yet obviously it is happening. And there's so many things in that book, and if you look at Brave New World and all these various writings that have, and look at the movies. I mean, the movies, there's been so many things coming out from movies back in the 60s, 70s, 80s that were predicting the times that we're in now, and look at the movies that are coming out now. And it's all about alien invasions and world government and disorder and apocalypse and zombie apocalypses, and it's just, even in the kids' movies, they're telling you the direction. It's a pre-programming kind of ideology, and I think that was just something that was obviously going on back then as it is going on today, just in maybe a different way, different format.
Yeah, it's subliminally installed. I mean, even the all-seeing eye on the back of the American dollar is an embed that's very creepy and very ominous and points towards this whole idea that we were moving towards this society where the government God would become omniscient and omnipresent.
Now, this is, I want to actually switch us from this, because in this world of intelligence agencies that basically control things and surveil everybody and what have you, what relevance does politics and in particular voting have anymore? And my opinion is not that much.
Great. This was a subject I wanted to get into you with, because during the New Zealand election, I occasionally kind of yanked your chain a little bit about the whole voting thing, and this is an intriguing subject, so let's do this.
See, I look at voting kind of like throwing a pebble into a lake. It ain't really going to change the lake, but frick, it's fun.
Well, I guess my question...
not going to recoil and go, oh, Harry, just don't at me.
But I guess my question is, and maybe I'm too much of a purist on this, I gave up voting after 2000 elections when George Bush was swept into office here, and I saw the deceptions that went on in voting. But even more than that, for me, at that point in time, it was where I was going in my research and what I discovered about the act of registering to vote, and the fact that, now this is an American thing, but I suspect that in all of the empire nations that are tied to the cabal, there's some similar thing going on. Here in the United States, you register to vote. You've basically, first off, registering anything is a way to do something which would otherwise be prohibited. So the government has now given us permission to vote. They've given us a two-party system in most states with which to vote. Both sides rigged, both sides controlled. The 2000 election in the United States was a very good indicator of how far they would go to make sure that their guy got in. And I don't, it's been said that here in the United States, we haven't had a president legally elected since Reagan in 1980. But the act of registering the vote, the fact that your citizenship as a living person on the land is not sufficient for you to cast a vote for your government, but that you have to go through documentation, certification, identification, and finally prostration to the government in order to be able to cast a vote, to me was so disturbing that I have never registered since. I don't plan to. Thus, I'm disenfranchised because I can't vote because of the mechanisms in the system.
If I was in America, I would have the exact same opinion to you, Randy, and I would refuse to vote. In New Zealand, it's slightly different, but
I wondered about that. Yeah, let's talk. Yeah.
Well, actually, David was about to say something, and I interrupted him. Sorry, bro.
Oh, no worries. And yeah, definitely get back to that, Vinny. I just wanted to mention that it does run, I mean, we have a two-party system here in Canada, and so it's the same kind of idea. And we know that there's a lot of these guys are, they're Bilderberg attendees, confirmed, and they are in bed with the same banking institutions, multinational corporations, lobby groups, the whole 9 yards. It's essentially set up the same way. It's got slight differences, but I mean, we are a Commonwealth, Crown, corporately owned, corporation, just like the rest of the countries in the world. And so we do have that system. And what I found out was interesting here in Canada was that you can register to have a no vote, basically meaning you can almost register to say, I choose neither or any of these groups because I'm so fed up with the way this is. Register to not vote. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. Imagine they got a big poll, although I'm sure they would never be honest about it. But imagine we got a poll of people that were so fed up with having the same line of bullshit come from either party for years and years. No matter who gets in, Canada keeps getting dismantled, and now it's to the point with all these trade agreements that even the former Defense Minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, who is 94 years old, is actually calling out the Canadian government on high treason. And it's these kinds of things that make me interested in politics, but at the same time, to see politicians that will speak out about it. But you're not going to have someone like, Paul Hellyer. He's retired. He's just commenting. You're not going to vote for somebody like that. So I would say maybe register not to vote. That way, at least you're telling them, hey, we're fed up with the whole bloody thing.
What happened to the concept of a vote of no confidence where sufficient disinterest is expressed and the government is disbanded? This would be, to me, one of the fundamentals that I would interject in any new constitutional initiatives were we to get to the place where we could resume control of our government here in the United States, would be simply the idea that voting in the United States, the raw numbers are basically less than 30% of the people vote. So effectively, any leader is probably voted in by less than about 20% of the population if you assume full participation of the remaining percentage of that. There is no benchmark anymore because a majority is simply a majority of the number of registered voters that vote, rather than the idea that simply without guns, without revolution, we would say no confidence in the government, disband the government, convene a party, a group of electors, and let us begin again. But that's what political parties do. They basically control at all times both sides of the opposition to maintain control which they jointly own in the governments.
And this is what really effed me off during the New Zealand election is I would say one thing and then people would accuse me of believing something that's based on that, for example, I'll say that I'm voting and then people would accuse me of thinking that voting mattered. Sure, that might be a logical conclusion, but at the end of the day, if you want to know my beliefs, why don't you just frickin' ask what they are, rather than just assuming and labeling, rather, you know what I'm saying? And this is how the voting system works in New Zealand. Number one, you have to be registered to vote, and you have a $200 fine if you don't vote. However, There's plenty of people I know personally who have not registered and have not received a fine. So that seems like a bit of a farce to me. The other part is your proxy voting. If you are registered to vote and you don't vote, then your vote is given by proxy in the exact same percentage of how everybody else would vote. All right?
Exactly.
So it's the exact same thing. If you're registered, you vote whether or not you want to. And it's not like that's written in the legislation. It's called mathematics. If 50% of people have the power to vote and 50% of people and 25% of those don't vote, that means the 25 remaining percent actually double the power of their vote. All right? One person votes for one party, that party basically through a percentage-wise in terms of the percentage of votes gets double the votes that they normally would if all of the other people actually participated. So the government in New Zealand has actually engaged in a deliberate agenda, and this has been exposed by a journalist called Nicky Hager, who wrote a book called Dirty Politics, where he revealed leaked emails between the Justice Minister and the one of the lead right-wing bloggers in New Zealand, and caught them in a deliberate agenda to sling mud and cause and stir up crap among the voting public's mindset, more or less, to literally put them off voting. And the reason they did this is because they know, and this is absolutely self-evident in my opinion, they know that the morons who would vote for their party will be the last people to realize that there's something going on and refuse to vote. Okay? And that's why most people who vote tend to vote in a very, very stupid format, as if they had no idea who they were voting for or why. And so naturally, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who's gotten us into, I think, more debt in his first term alone than all previous Prime Ministers in New Zealand history combined by a huge margin, as in we've gone from 8 billion, that's the last 150 years of our country's existence, that's how much debt we racked up, 8 billion, to 80 billion. In less than 2 terms, and then we elect him for a 3rd term.
That's amazing. Can I just say something quick there, Vinny? Isn't it funny, guys, that we're from 3 different countries? I'm here in Canada, Vinny, you're there in New Zealand, and Randy, you're in the States, and all of our elected officials currently have done exactly what he has described. Where, in Canada, they'd say the same thing with the Harper government, running the debt up to an unimaginable degree. Obama, same thing, made George Bush look like a schoolboy. But we all know the real effect here, and that's because these guys are just puppets, and this is a symptom of what's been taking place in the Ponzi scheme that we call the economic system. And so that's really where the juicy stuff is, and that's where people need to start looking. Because if we get too embroiled in the politics, and I do agree with the way that Vinny's doing, in a way it can be a great opportunity to spread awareness about the issues when you sort of engage in the political arena a little bit. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the true underlying root causal factors as to why all of our countries simultaneously are being hurled into debt and being hurled into centralization under the World Bank and the IMF, and all of us are partaking in the same wars, and there's no real say. We know that, so we got to really get into the deep causal factors, I think, as to what really starts all this stuff going on.
What we've defined here is how our voting systems are similar. Now I'm going to describe how New Zealand's voting system is a little bit different. We've got a thing called MMP rather than first past the post. And MMP means that if you are part of a political party and you get at least 5% of the vote, that means you get to be represented in Parliament. Or if you get elected in a single region, you can get represented in Parliament too, regardless of whether or not your party makes the 5% threshold. Now, what's happened is people have, of course, just through the general rigmarole of the media and whatnot, all of the parties that actually stand for truth, justice, transparency, kicking out the bankers, exposing scumbaggery and whatnot, just because they don't get any media attention more or less whatsoever, it becomes increasingly difficult for them to make that 5% threshold, and almost as difficult in order to get any particular electorate seat. So it seems to be relatively controlled. However, there are people who, for example, the person I voted for, Winston Peters, who I've known and followed for a number of years. Back in the early 90s, he started up a investigation, and that was dubbed the Wine Box Inquiry, because he brought in to Parliament all his papers of this investigation in an old wine box, hence the Wine Box Inquiry. Now, what he was investigating was massive tax evasion by members of the New Zealand elite in concert with foreign banking interests. And he was demonized in the media ad infinitum. He was thrown out of his party, and then he came back with his own party and actually garnered nearly a 10% voting threshold. And I believe this is probably because he's been a politician for about 50 years. Now, just like every other politician, you can't trust 100% of what they say or do. However, you can look at their track record and be able to make at least a comparably accurate prediction as to what they will do if given power, and what they have done when they haven't been in power. Now, I was in a meeting with him, I think this might have been about 4 years ago, maybe just prior to the 2008 election here, and he mentioned the Rothschild family in a speech. He mentioned the banks ripping New Zealanders off. He mentioned commission management systems for privatisation, which allows for private management to take control of public assets without selling the public assets and without giving any dividends to any private contractors unless they actually make a profit with those public assets, right? And he said that this is the way that the Rothschilds actually control their wealth. And I found that this to be really quite incredible, because nobody I had ever heard in any political sphere in an elected party has been able to make those connections, or at the very least say it. Now, he wasn't saying it in public. The second element is basically he's probably the least boring politician that I've ever heard of. He's very, very entertaining, and directly after I voted for him in the 2008 election, he was the first to be thrown out of Parliament because he called the earthquake recovery minister, Jerry Brownlee, an illiterate woodshop teacher on the floor on the House floor.
Beautiful.
And see, I vote only for troublemakers, specifically because they are troublemakers, and any spanner in the works that is in Parliament is absolutely worth supporting. And I have investigated this politician. I have asked all the knowledgeable people within the activist sphere that I have been a part of for many years in New Zealand. Can any of them show me anything or any evidence that Winston Peters has lied before, knowingly misrepresented his policies, or engaged in any other form of scumbaggery? None of them could come up with a single thing. Now, if somebody's been in politics for 50 years and they've never misrepresented their policies or lied to the public, that seems like a safe choice to me, even in a rigged voting system. And that's why I chose to vote for him.
Yeah, my God, that's incredible. I mean, and I guess the question that I keep coming to is, are we so focused on this bottom-down process where we focus the President of the United States, the Prime Minister, in other words, the top echelons of government, rather than drilling down into the local level and beginning to infiltrate up? Do you guys have thoughts on grassroots politics that maybe could make a difference?
I think that's a good question, Randy. And I mean, you've got to look at the integrity of the people, and you will, more time, you'll find people in the local municipal governments to be usually easier to work with and more receptive, and, they're more like your average person. But it depends on the district, depends on the city, and you see corruption everywhere. But there are good people trying to do what they can. My parents in Saskatchewan, they've got some good connections with the local politicians there, and they really support these guys, and they've kind of vetted them and feel that they have integrity. And so it's good that people rally behind good politicians like that are trying. But the problem is, and even they mentioned this, is that because it's so top-heavy, because there is all these restrictions from the federal level of government, it really ties their hands on any kind of big issues, and even they are aware of the limitations they have, and they are trying to petition and try to get people to vote against some of these actions and some of these new laws and the new powers that are being given to federal governments. So I think that it's a better approach to try to see if we can get real people in there that have integrity on the local level, and it's just a matter of how drastic are they willing to go? Are they willing to go against the script? Are they willing to go against the sort of party line that they're given? Because we all know that it's a pyramid structure. Some of them are, and perhaps Vinny has, he's right on about the guy he's talking about there. And in Canada, we do have some people that I'm aware of that are really trying to do active or become active and really bring about change. But how do you really implement it? How do you fight that's the size, the monstrosity of this big federal org now? Like, it's, I don't know, it's a question of our time.
Can I interject here? Because politics happen once every couple of years, right? And one thing that really frustrates me is people who think that democracy is a weekend retreat, that they can just, tick a piece of paper and then they've saved the country. No. Here's what you got to do. Every single day. Just like, what's her name? The big sis, the See Something, Say Something campaign. I'm going to be the big Vinny. The See Scumbaggery, Expose Scumbaggery campaign. Every day. You've got to be exposing just a little bit of scumbaggery, And, I mean, you get up in the morning and, you get in your diary, okay, I got to go to work on my slave job, I got to fill up the car, I got to feed the kids, and we'll add a little bit of exposure of scumbaggery on there as well. Cool. Now, if you spend 1,000 days between elections where you elect a new scumbag exposing said scumbaggery, are you doing the wrong thing? Does voting in a corrupt system automatically void and make irrelevant all the corruption watchdogging, all the blogging, and all of the public discourse that you're trying to get out there, all the people that you've helped in the middle of the 1,000 days where you have no power of the vote, in which case the vote doesn't really have a whole lot of power anyway. It is what you do between elections that actually truly matters, and what you do during the election is kind of like a misnomer to a degree, and this is why I don't actually really, I came to the realization, I don't mind if people don't vote, and I don't mind if people do vote. What I mind is people who do nothing between voting to save their country from scumbaggery. That I do not accept as a valid life passage, and I don't like being associated with people like that, because it has occurred to me that they have abdicated their personal responsibility and they're more than willing for scumbaggery to control the country while they sit by and do nothing about it.
So basically this is going back to that famous quote that's attributed to Jefferson, which says that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
I would say it actually goes closer to Jefferson's quote that's saying, my nation is the world and my religion is to do good. Or that might have been a Franklin or Andrew Jackson quote, actually. It doesn't matter who your figurehead is. You need to be doing the right thing. Not because you get rewarded for it, and not because people hold you in high esteem because of it, but because it's the right thing to do, and it needs no further justification than that.
But isn't this really the old bread and circuses thing? I mean, we started off tonight talking about the adulteration of social media. And I think the reason why social media has become so controllable and predictable is because they also, like everything else they do, have sugar-coated it, they've made it fun. People love their Twitter, they love their Facebook. Google gives me free email. Look at all the services we have. And so they allured us into this technosphere where we willingly put all of our goods right up on the table for them to watch, them to spy on, them to co-op. And politics is the same way. We're comfortable. We're anesthetized. I mean, we're not. But I look at people right now and I keep thinking, the economy is sinking rapidly, especially here in the United States. I've never, ever experienced, and I hate the word, but I'll use it anyway, the malaise that you see in the economic sector. And yet it seems like people were drilling in harder in their escapism, in their willful complicity with the system's deterioration, because they're almost now drugged by everything around them, by money, by sex, by sports, by whatever is their own particular vice. And so it becomes the question, how do you get down to the point where you get a critical threshold of interest in holding the leaders accountable?
Can I answer that?
Absolutely.
Because I believe that the public isn't informed enough to be able to vote accurately and actually produce a government that represents their interests. Because do you know what the majority of women who voted for our current Prime Minister, who's a former Federal Reserve banker, you know why they voted for him? Because they thought he was sexy.
That's what swept Bill Clinton into office in the United States.
Now, Kiwi women have a drinking problem.
Mm-hmm.
No more beersies for you, girls. All right? Something's got to be done about the alcohol culture in this country. It's just unbelievable. But what I've found is that this is all because of the media's fault. Basically, the media's job is supposed to be as the fourth estate, isn't it? To inform people so that they can actually make decisions based upon accurate information. And if the media does in New Zealand, like they do everywhere else, merely report what a politician has said and not investigate whether or not they've said something that's true, that has evidence behind it, and report it anyway, there is nothing to stop the filter feeding of disinformation getting into the minds of people on a subliminal level to make them not only not give a frack who wins or not and become completely apathetic with the entire situation, which is what the ruling and dominant parties want anyway, but two, even if they were to choose to vote, they wouldn't know who to vote for or why, because nobody knows any of the policies. You see Vox Popular people going around saying, why are you voting for this person? Can you name a single one of their policies? Everybody's like, So you're voting for somebody and you want them to have control over your life and your country, ostensibly, and you don't have a frickin' clue who they are or what they're planning to do with your country.
That's because you're usually asking them, most people discuss what your favorite TV show is, what your favorite actor is, what your favorite movie is, who's your favorite politician. It's all in the same bag of stuff, the cluttered information that's up there for most people, unfortunately. And you made a good statement that people are not correctly educated about the people that they're voting for, and they're not educated about how the system really works. And we all know this, that in general, human beings are afraid of change. And the question is, are we so afraid of change that we're afraid to act or bring about positive action that would change the system for the positive? I mean, we can only go up from here. I don't really think we can sink lower. I mean, we could, but I think that...
Trust me. Scumbaggery has no upper threshold.
I agree.
Guys,
but you know what I'm saying? Like, at this point, whether it's the political sector or the social sector or any sector of society that you want to look at, we need to start asking the question as to, do we really want to be free? What does it really mean to be human? I mean, that's really the questions of the time with this whole merging of technology coming out now. Our humanity is in question. What does it mean to be a living, breathing human? How connected to the planet that we are a part of and that is our home and is the place that we reside and we have space and we have all the resources that we really need. Are we going to connect with that, or are we going to divorce from that and create our own little party and keep going down this whole industrial road that's leading to a totally different type of human being altogether? Humanity 2.0, as they call it.
That's the next conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to take I want to take a break here for a few minutes.
And we got to get this around to the people we're talking to and evolve it past politics, I think, and start saying, let's talk about just your humanity? What does it mean to be human? Can we have that conversation, or are we still just wrapped up in talking about whatever the latest Hollywood buzz is, you know?
Can I say something for 10 seconds just before we go to break? It's about people abdicating their personal responsibility. Take me as an example. I realise that there is no Alex Jones in New Zealand trying to inform people about the scumbaggery that upsets the country, regardless of whatever your opinions are on him. I simply saw the problem, that nobody was helping the Kiwi activists get the word out to inform the public so that they can make informed choices. So I took personal frickin' responsibility for making sure that it happened, because nobody else will. If you have the idea, ladies and gentlemen, don't go to somebody and say, oh, I've got this great idea, can you help me with this because you're so much better at it, and blah, 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 blah. No, don't ask for help. That's your first big mistake. Start helping. That is your first victory.
And when we come back, we'll discuss that and much more. I want to talk about the Modern Knowledge Tour with David Whitehead and more about global politics with our guest, Vinny Eastwood. This is ManTalk. We'll be right back in about 7 minutes. And we are back. Hour number 2 of the ManTalk project. What planet are we on? Is this the world we grew up in? Is it changed a lot in our lifetimes? How rapidly is the spin cycle of sociological engineering that's going on in the planet? These are all questions that I think we all ponder. And welcome back for the second hour, Vinny Eastwood and David Whitehead.
Hello, Randy. Hello, everybody. Great to be back.
Hey, I wanted to talk about something I wasn't able to squeeze into the last segment. Petitions, you know. I love how people are always sending these e-petitions of ours and what have you. And it's like, I see petitions against like the Illuminati and stuff like that. What are they going to do? Oh, we've got the largest military force in the world, and we can hunt down anybody. We've got the NDAA where we can hellfire missile any US citizen worldwide without a warrant and just execute them and what have you. But no. These elite will just start shaking in their boot. Dear God, they've got signatures on a piece of paper. Whatever will we do? Freaking waste of time.
Isn't that really what social media is doing? I mean, I look at this and I watch what comes across my eyes a lot of times, and I'm like, this is futility. This is just, frankly, nothing more than, pardon the term, jerking off in terms of what people can actually do. But what really would it take to mobilize change on the scale that we now need to? I mean, look, we've watched how these plans have just locked into place one after another. And I mark it from 2001 forward just because as an American, I saw what 9/11 did to galvanize the cabal's efforts. It gave them the pretext to do all of the things that they previously did not have the psychological force to do. So where are we in terms of any kind of cohesive movement or any ability to affect change on a scale that's going to begin to stem the tide?
Well, we're moving further down the line. I mean, now look at the environment we live in, where you've got more fear and more propaganda out there. You've got all the latest threats, the latest enemies. We're obviously now all concerned around the world about the spread of Ebola. And then, of course, we also have this situation with ISIS. Interesting choice of name, by the way.
Yes.
And there's so many things happening. And you know what I'm seeing, Randy? I'm seeing a lot of people not buying into it. Even people that maybe weren't as educated or have done a lot of research into political control in the world and how these things work and the machinations of various organizations, institutions, and personages on the planet. They might not have been aware of that, but they're certainly looking at this situation being spun out of control by the media in so many different ways. and they're seeing through it. And I talk to a lot of young people, and that's kind of where I'm betting my chips, so to speak, is when I listen to the young people and I see these brilliant people putting out great videos. You got 9, 10, 11-year-old kids that are far more intelligent, eloquent, and educated than your average, middle-aged person these days. So don't count out the kids. Don't count out the fact that there are people that are aware of what's going on. They're seeing right through it, and they're pointing it out, and they're exposing that scumbaggery, as Vinny would say. And I just want to get out there and support these groups of young people that are passionate. They've got brilliant ideas. I speak with them all the time, and that's where I've been really concentrating my efforts, because every time I try to speak to someone that has never come into these types of subjects or really looked at the world in this way from an older generation, I sometimes just feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. And I'm sure they're well-intentioned, but I'm going to put my efforts where I feel like people are really wanting to put in some change. And a lot of these young people just don't know where to funnel that energy and that passion. So maybe it's up to us to keep paving the way and keep firing suggestions and keep the conversation going and keep bringing on great guests onto our shows and putting out information in every way that we can to help educate the young people.
Well, somebody asked me, what way can I resist the New World Order? And I answer them with a question. In what ways is the New World Order currently screwing you over? The answer is every single way conceivable. So how do you resist? Any way you want to, any way you can. As long as you're not supporting the New World Order agenda, as long as you're opposing it in some way, shape or form, you're at least it's better than doing nothing at all. And I believe that I might sound a bit cynical and jaded like a real journalist when I say this, but you need to suffer. You need to experience extraordinary pain, anguish, fear, and dread before your comfort bubble gets burst. Once it is burst, there is no telling what you can turn into. There is no telling how much damage you can do to the New World Order. And I said on the radio a couple of years back, and I'm only just starting now to implement my this phrase, you can either get 10,000 listeners for you can get 100,000 listeners for yourself, or you can help 10 people get 10,000 listeners each and still do the same amount of damage to the New World Order. And when my YouTube channel got deleted, I started within a week or two after that producing new independent radio shows for 2 New Zealand commentators who don't mince words, who actually do really rigorous investigation when they're criticizing corruption in this country. The reason I did that is I'm trying to basically institute my own demise. I'm trying to make myself irrelevant by creating my own competition and refusing to actually try to control these people. I want them to have their own voice. I want them to have their own shows. I want them to not need me anymore. And hopefully that will actually, in a way, you can change one person's life, and that in and of itself is better than doing nothing. And people have this high threshold. It's like, oh, well, you did this and it didn't solve all the world's problems. Well, hold on a second. Did I cause all the world's problems? Well, no. Then why am I suddenly obligated to solve them all, bro? Really? I mean,
yeah, it's like when you want to talk about it, they are like, well, what are you doing? What are we going to do? Like they instantly jump to that because really they just want relief from the fear or the insecurity they're feeling after what you've told them that may have shattered one of their paradigms, right? So,
well, they just want somebody to come along and save them so they can continue being uncaring, spineless, apathetic pieces of trash. All right, basically that's at the end of the day. We've been crafted specifically through the media and the education and the political games that are being played to give up all our power and to be jellyfish, more or less, spineless and follow the current.
Well, I mean, that just kind of brings me to what we're trying to do here in Canada. And this just is, I'm not sitting here trying to toot my own horn or anything like that. But, I'm saying what I did. I can only share my experience. And what I like what Vinny was saying earlier in the first hour about how you have to find your own means of contributing in the way that you're feeling that you have your skills, your passions, and your knowledge and your awareness. If you have a way to communicate information right now, is the time to do it. It's kind of an all hands on deck kind of scenario. I think we can all agree on that. And so what I did And what I started doing here is networking with people that I felt were like-minded, that were passionate, that had a lot of great ideas. That's how I bumped into my buddy and partner with Modern Knowledge, Chris Rusak. And him and I just kind of sat down and started having some brainstorming sessions. And we're both out there doing little meetup groups locally and talking to people. And I was doing my interviews online and just a presence on social media. And we're like, how do we get this conversation off of social media for a change? You know, it has its advantages, but there's nothing beats being in a room with physical people and communicating and, you know, and having the chance to look people in the eyes and feel their energy and shake their hand and give them a hug or whatever. Nothing beats that. So we decided to try to go across the country, and that's what ended up becoming the Modern Knowledge Tour. And I'd never done anything like this. I'd organized some smaller martial art events and tournaments and things like that, but I hadn't done anything of this magnitude, especially with this subject matter. I had no idea how it was going to be received in Canada. And we ended up, it started out with like 5 cities, then 6 cities, then 11 cities, then 12 cities. And it went to 12. I don't know, just lucky number 12, I don't know. And we ended up hitting coast to coast from Halifax, Nova Scotia, all the way to British Columbia. And I didn't know after that was over. It was a great success, but people responded incredibly to it. But I didn't know what it was going to go on from there. But it was effective in communicating information, and we met so many amazing people from all different demographics, you know, young people, old people, people in politics, people in banking, people in, we even had some Buddhist monks come, and it was just, we had such an amazing round table with so many different people discussing issues, and we had speakers there, and it was just awesome. And it turned into something now, and now people want more. So my partner Chris and I, we just said, hey, let's get the thing going, and we now created a platform here, and we're still in the works of building that. And we've got other events coming up, and anybody that wants to check it out, they can go to our website. It's modernknowledge.ca, and you can see what we did, and you can think to yourself and go, hey, you know, what can I do in my area? This was just our knowledge, our skill set, our passion, and using the connections that we had to bring these people to Canada and have these conversations and build these platforms. This is what we did. And I hope in some way that people can look at that and say, like, if they can do it, we can do it. You know, I'm just a regular guy. And my partner Chris, we're dads, we have families, we're trying to make ends meet just like everybody else. And just like you gentlemen on this show, you're running your shows, you're doing your work, and we're all in this together. And that's the point. And everybody has a skill set, everybody has a talent, everybody has a passion, and if we can unite on it, just a few things, we don't have to agree on everything, but just a few things, and just asking, you know, do we want freedom? Do we want real food? Do we want access to real, healthy, clean food and water? Do we want a better future for our children with education? Do we, you know, just talking about these things. And you'd be surprised how many people come out of the woodwork. And I think there's a lot more people that are awake, not only in this country, but all around the world, than we might even really be able to imagine. I just think it's a matter of somebody putting a flag in the ground and saying, hey, we're here, this is what we're doing, and you'd be surprised how much support you're going to get.
Well, I liken it to pygmy tribes in the long grass. Nobody can see that there's any pygmies in that long grass because the grass is too long. But as soon as 2 pygmies work together and get up on one another's shoulders, suddenly all the other pygmies in the long grass can see that there's some of their people over there, and they start moving towards them. The problem is the lion that is stalking you in the long grass can see you too, and it's just a question of who reaches you first, your friends or your enemies.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. So
now, I also wanted to expand on this because what David was saying about being a father and whatnot, it reminded me of a scene from Mel Gibson's movie The Patriot, when they are deciding and voting in Georgetown whether or not they're going to join the Continental Army and oppose the British. And Mel Gibson's character refuses. And I think it was Chris Cooper's character, he says, but what about your principles? And he says, I'm a parent. I don't have the luxuries of principles. To which is replied, wars are not fought only by childless men.
Yeah. You know what? It's real men that are out there setting a good example. And we've touched on this in other man talks, and I think this is so key, that there is a specific role that the male plays in society, and there's a specific role that the female plays in society. And I'm not trying to define those terms. I think everybody has to express themselves according to their free will and their passion and their expression. But, in terms of, what you're citing there, Vinny, is so important, because the men that are being conscripted to go and fight these wars overseas right now, these aren't fully grown men, I'm afraid. These are kids. Even if they're older, they might just be stuck in a place of more like childlike consciousness, because that's what the military does. What you're talking about were real fathers, husbands, men of the community stand up and defend their ground and say, hey, this is our line in the sand. We're not going to take this anymore, and we're willing to put our lives on the line in order to represent our principles and our values and to protect our freedoms and liberties. That mentality has been systematically bred out of us. If you look at the men today, and we've said this before, and I'm not going to harp on this, but it is important. We're not, living in a society of real men anymore, and we need that to return. And this is why in my work I've been bringing forward a lot of the ancient philosophy in regards to the warrior tradition, because the warrior tradition in its true form was a great way of training and cultivating that spirit that was essential for survival and for facing adversaries and for facing predators and for facing fears, and you can even bring it into an internal conflict that we all have, and you can apply it there. And so these are the principles that are missing. I think that it's definitely time they return, and that's a great example in that movie. There's many great ones out there, and
I want to expand on it.
Connect to that again, absolutely.
I want to expand on it because the movie goes on, and guess what the point that Mel Gibson's character decides that he was actually going to fight the British and kill those soldiers was when they killed one of his sons and arrested the other and started to take him away to be hung as a spy. It is once it is made personal, once it is no longer somebody else, because everybody has this, it's somebody else mentality, it won't happen to me. Even in World War II, when recruits were lined up, they were given specific indications by the COs that look at the two men next to you, the chances are they won't be around. 2 out of 3 of you will die in service. And you know what everybody thought, including the people that were next to the other people that they were saying that they were looking next to? It must feel bad for you two guys, not realizing that actually it's more likely then they would be the ones who would die on the battlefield. Now, this male and female aspects are actually defined really well by a New Zealand doctor called Dr. Sam Shea, who I've interviewed and made a couple of videos for. You can watch it on my YouTube channel, Sam Shea, Shay. The video there I'm referencing now is why men die quick, violent deaths and women die slow, painful deaths. And it seems like a very foreboding thing, but it's such an interesting presentation. And one of the slides that he does in this presentation is the generalized aspects of the male and the female brain and the functions of which. Now, he specifically says that it's not absolutely definitely one side or the other, but there's a correlation between them, is the word. So let me just read out the left brain, the male aspects of it. Testosterone, logic, action, detail, facts, words and language. All right. And then you have a look at the right, or the female brain. Estrogen, feeling, thinking, big picture, imagination, symbols, and images. Now, when I see this, I start to think, we're actually defined into these very specific roles, not necessarily like those roles are absolutely defined and there's no way to get out of them. There's ways to train your brain and in order to use both sides or different sides more, that kind of thing. However, the general rule is sort of there. And when I read this list as a talk radio show host and a man, I thought, man, it's no wonder that men dominate the talk radio fields, is it? detail, facts, words, language, action, logic, testosterone. We're all about aggression and making things happen and actually analysing things down to their crux details. Conversely, the females, it is absolutely no surprise to me that they dominate the teaching field and the counselling field and the psychology field, because they're using feeling, thinking, big picture, imaginations, and symbols and images. They're capable, much more so than men, of emotional intelligence, as I say. And I think there's something like 7 different forms of intelligence that's being theorized right now. IQ is only one form of intelligence, and there are many, many other ways. Creative intelligence and spatial intelligence, these kind of things. And what this means, to me at least, is that we can understand what our strengths are, what our abilities are, and actually use them. All right? And I think that's pretty straightforward, don't you think? If you've got a talent, use it. Otherwise, you're going to lose it.
Oh, so true. And this idea of where we need to actually achieve a balance, I think, between this concept of and femininity, and when you're referencing the idea of intelligence, I think it was Mark Passio that brought this up brilliantly. He was talking about the 2 different words of intellect versus intelligence. And what we've been turning out in the school system with both men and women is a leaning towards the intellectual pursuits, where it's purely logical, deductive reasoning, etc. And there's very little creativity or real emotional or intuitive capacity there. And the term intelligence, when you break it down, you're actually looking at the combination of using the intellect and then gens, which is referring more to the feminine side or the more intuitive center. So when you have true intelligence, you're talking about somebody that has a holistic thought process and can express in a balanced way, both all of those holistic ways of thinking and viewing things. Whereas when you have someone purely intellectual, which we've got a lot of those guys running around telling us what to do, and what, these are the guys that, of course, developed the Manhattan Project and the atom bombs. Very intellectual people have created machines of death and destruction that would blow your mind. And we could probably even throw Ebola and AIDS and all these other things in there too. So not really intelligent. And that's even going back to politics. Are these politicians displaying intelligent decision-making capabilities? No. They might be intellectual to some degree, although even that's debatable. But, you can see it there. So rebalancing it in the individual doesn't mean you have to be a man or you have to be a woman to express the opposite polarity. But it is talking about unification.
It's about
balance. One more point on that I find very interesting. When you go back into the esoteric tradition, you realize that masculinity was usually symbolized by an upward pointing triangle, which they called the blade. And then when you'd have the feminine qualities that were demonstrated, it would be symbolized by what they call the chalice, which is a downward pointing triangle. And of course, what's interesting is when you put them together, you collectively get the Star of David. Now, this isn't something that's just relegated towards Judaism as a religion. This goes back to ancient Egypt and before, but it is essentially referencing almost like the yin-yang principle of a balancing of the 2 polarities, and that's where you're going to find the concept of enlightenment or intelligence. And so it's just interesting when you even look at the symbolism. It's always been something that's been discussed throughout the ages.
Well, I think it's like the brain's very much like has a relationship between the left and the right hemisphere, much like men and women have a relationship, okay? They're not completely separate. We go together. And there's a reason for that, because we work so much better together. All our strengths and all our weaknesses get compensated for when we find our significant other. And I think that's what really being a man and trying to find a woman is really about, is looking for that significant other.
One of the things that I'd like to kind of point in this conversation, too, is the fact that we have redirected our energies, and especially the men, but now increasingly women as well, into combat service to the cabal. And I'm wondering if we don't begin to turn this around by withdrawing that energy. When we give the blood of our children to fight wars on foreign soil, for the interests of corporations. And that's a reality that I don't think has been fully exposed to mainstream yet. The big broadcast media outlets will not talk about this because they're part of it. But the idea that we're still sending troops overseas, I understand we don't quite have, quote, boots on the ground in Syria yet, but that's going to come. When we begin to withdraw that energy and we redirect by training our children in right thinking, we now begin to marshal those same energies into something we can redirect against the power system. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the United States already does have boots on the ground in Syria. It's called ISIS, which were funded by America.
Yeah, of course.
Currently using American ammunition. So just one little bit of a correction there. But yeah, I think if you try to separate yourself, it's sort of like I was thinking during the break, I'm not sure if this answers the question, in fact it probably doesn't, but talking about priorities of service. So my service is of 3 tiers, much like my bodily needs. My body needs water, food, and sleep, in that order. And just like my service to humanity, I serve myself to make sure I'm still alive, my people, just to make sure that all of those around me are in good condition, and then lastly there's the globe, other people's people, which are basically just still people too. And again, in that order. If I was to stop drinking, in 3 days I'd be dead. If I was to stop eating, in a couple of weeks I'd be dead. If I was to stop sleeping, I don't know how long I'd last. I certainly wouldn't be able to stop myself from sleeping after a certain point. And they've done these Russian sleep experiments, and by God, does not having enough sleep really mess up your day. But again, it's talking about what your real practical needs are. Now, we all have the need for love, we all have the need for freedom, and we all have the need for sustenance. I think that's a given, you know? Anybody disagree with that, you know? I don't think so. However, what's problematic is that I think the New World Order's figured out exactly what our needs are, whether that be yourself, your people, or the people of the world, or your water, your food, and your air, and your sleep. And in many, many ways, they've sought to disperse that priority and actually make people desire to deprive themselves of these things that they need. In so doing, they become the architect of their own destruction via their own volition, even if they were never even aware in the first place that they were making a choice at all. That's what needs to change.
Yeah, that's reflected throughout so many areas in our system here, where in so many ways we're the ones that are our own gatekeepers. You know, I love seeing everybody out there on blogs, and they're all commenting on different people that have stood out and questioned the system, and they're all, getting this banter going back and forth, and I'm just sitting there going, why are we focusing on people? Why are we not like on some person's opinion? Like, why are we not trying to formulate our own opinion? Why are we not becoming more active in pursuing our own expressions of trying to communicate information? Instead, what do? Even in this so-called alternative movement, we kick each other in the nuts and we push each other down. And it's just very interesting that the true fight here, I think a lot of what we're seeing on the political stage and the geopolitical stage is a reflection of the battle that so many people are fighting inside themselves. Yeah. And it's not enough to just know about 9/11 or false flag terror or government cover-ups or political agendas or monetary systems or anything like that. It's not enough to just know about that. You've got to somehow look at this information and say, this is an opportunity for me to grow as a person, and to use that as a way of reflecting back into, myself. When you point a finger, you got 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? And there's a reason for that, in my opinion. And I think that is to always keep in mind, yes, be aware of the predators and be aware of, know thine enemy, so to speak. But remember that there's that inner war that people need to start facing and developing. And we have to start developing and becoming more intelligent and learning and wanting to share and putting others first and, creating positive change. And we can't do that if we're just finger pointing at everybody else. And that's just kind of one of my little pet peeves there.
I agree, and I was looking down my Facebook thread. I haven't found the post yet, but I think one of my listeners said to me once about my responsibilities, and I always find it very ironic, somebody telling you what your responsibilities are. You know, especially if you've basically proven yourself to be a hell of a lot more responsible than them. And anyway, this person was trying to convince me that I'm a hardcore truther. And I go, well, that's strange, because I don't know any hardcore people who I consider to be hardcore truthers who actually refer to themselves as hardcore truthers, you know? And they got kind of frustrated at me and just started kind of like wailing off, going really on the attack and what have you. And I was just, dude. I called him a keyboard truther, all right? And this wasn't meant as an insult, all right? I actually quantified it and qualified it. If you're a keyboard truther, it doesn't mean you're not playing a part. It doesn't mean that the things that you're doing are not important. And throughout history and throughout conflicts and things of that nature, there's an army, for example, has cooks, nurses, people who set up base camps and things of that nature. Because if the people on the front line had no base to go back to, had nobody to patch them up, had nobody to feed them, they would die out there on the front line. Okay? So that is why it is so important for everybody to just keep playing their part. And remember that it is those who actually play most of the crucial roles in conflicts and societies that are often the least recognized and the least praised. And just because, you know, I'm a talk radio show host and anything doesn't mean I'm any better than you, doesn't mean I'm doing more than you. It just means I've taken responsibility and decided to play my part. And so should we all. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And if somebody had come across me and, like, say, I don't know, 8 years ago, before I became a real kind of like full-time truther, and said, Vinny, you know, you're going to have the most subscribed YouTube channel in New Zealand news media, and you're going to be the darling of the American Patriot Talk radio circuit and everything like that, I would have said, yeah, that sounds exactly like the kind of douchebaggy thing that I'd do. I wouldn't have been surprised whatsoever, because I know what my own capacities are. I know my abilities are quite, well, basically, I have power, right? And everybody does. But the trick is to convince you that you don't. If they can convince you of that, then you don't have any. Stop buying into it. People tell you can't do anything, you can't change anything, you can't make a difference, you can't help people, you can't do this, that, or the other, blah, 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 blah. These are weak individuals who have already abdicated their own ability to change things, their own ability to actually contribute to society. And it wasn't society that actually makes them slave-like and capitulate. It is actually you have made a choice to not contribute. Don't choose that path, for it always leads to ruin.
David, I wanted to ask you about your involvement with the Ubuntu movement in Canada, that being the political movement that was founded in South Africa by Michael Tellinger. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Basically, what I had agreed to do, and I'd spoken at length with Michael. I've known him for a few years, and we, of course, drove across the country with him and had many conversations. And we were looking at a way to try to help get the information out there to people in Canada that there are people on the ground that are working in all aspects of our society to try to help bring about change. And the platform of Ubuntu here in Canada was just basically a couple people just trying to get together, and maybe they would go for coffee, talk about some ideas, and then it would just fizzle out. So we ended up having all these different splintering groups of people that it wasn't really manifesting anything. And so what we agreed to do once Michael was here, because we saw the incredible response to this idea, which is essentially using a lot of ancient ideas from various indigenous tribes and shamanic traditions and whatnot to kind of take a new, fresh look at how we should be building up our communities so that we can become self-sufficient. It's really the idea there. And we were trying to set something up here in Canada where we could say, let's get people together in a bigger way and really make an effect. And so we decided to register a political party here in Canada for Ubuntu, knowing full well that it's not going to stand a chance in terms of gaining seats, because we know that even if there is many votes that go that way, it's just kiboshed and those people never make it. It's never happened in any country in the world, even though there's Ubuntu parties in like over 200 countries right now. But what it is it's an effective tool of breaching into more of the mainstream and getting a message out there. And it's as if the people that I've been speaking to are just regular, everyday people, but they all have a passion for change, for accessing valid information, for getting rid of the corrupt banking system and the corrupt government system that's here, and trying to find a way to bring power back to the communities again. Because right now we know that everything's going all the way up to the federal level, and the communities have no power and no unity and we're not working together. So the political platform was sort of set up here by many Canadians that I meet with people on Skype pretty much regularly, and my partner Chris, he does the same thing. He's really been doing a lot of the organizing behind the scenes for it. And we've just been sharing ideas and saying, hey, how do we breach the political system, and how do we create more awareness, and how do we try to attract those lower level politicians that do want to bring about change but just don't have any support and can't get anything going. And so this is just a way to try to unify, put a flag up and say, hey, we're in Canada, we're trying to help at a community level, we have a lot of great ideas, and it's just become a way of generating more awareness about the issues that we face here in Canada. And we've also been working with, as I mentioned him before, former Defense Minister Paul Hellyer, because he is taking action as well to expose the various criminality and these decisions to sell out our country. He's been working hard to do that. So it seems like there's many things happening in Canada where we're getting out into the media more, we're getting more into the political arena on a very lower level, but just, as I said, as a way to gain more awareness. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback from places that, from all over Canada, and people are really excited about it. They're trying to work on more community farming ideas. They're trying to support each other locally and not go to the big, box stores and big chains and, supporting, slavery overseas by buying these kinds of goods that are shipped in, by not supporting the big corporations, by not supporting the big banks. They're taking away that support, and we're trying to put that support into things in the community level that will really bring about some change. So it's been something very exciting. The people that I've been working with are just unbelievable. And I think it'll be a great way to at least get the conversation going in a bigger way here in Canada.
Interacting with somebody like Paul Hellyer, do you get the sense that there are other politicians that are at that level, at that scale, that potentially will come out and become, I won't call them whistleblowers, I'll call them leakers, in terms of bringing out the nitty-gritty details and themselves disclosing the nature of these large government systems?
Randy, I wish I could tell you that I could see that there's all these candidates lined up for that, but there really isn't, as far as I see. Not to the level that Paul Hellyer is going at it. We just went down and helped him launch his new book that just came out. He feels it's his final message. It's his final warning. It's called The Money Mafia, A World in Crisis. He's going right after the big fish in this book, going after the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, Merrill Lynch, the globalist banking cabal, all that. And he is really pointing out a lot of the things that have happened in Canada. And to have somebody of his caliber as a politician, and one of the longest standing politicians in Canada, as I said, he's 92 or 93 years old, and he's still ticking, and he's still trying to go to war with Ottawa and expose all these guys. And I don't see a single hand being raised in the political arena to try to really help support him, even though I wouldn't be surprised if there are politicians that do want to support it, but they're too cowardly, in my opinion. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their prestige. They work their whole lives to try to get in and be successful and have a nice, cushy job with plenty of vacation time, living in Ottawa there, and it just seems like they get bought off very, very easily. But I've spoken with Paul many times, and he is definitely not a person that is getting bought off, and he is doing this for the goodness of humanity. That's where he's coming from. That's what he said to me. I've seen it him prove it with his actions, and I think that what will happen is it won't come from the political arena. It'll come more from the public arena. It'll come from the people within the inside. We'll have people in the banks coming out. We'll have people in the agricultural organizations coming out. We'll have people from within the Canadian medical establishment coming out, and the media. And so I think that we're going to see that happen before we see the politicians start to, come around here.
One thing I really find difficult is people who aren't willing to confront the reality, I mean, I had this person one time telling me that I need to think peaceful thoughts and that evil isn't what I think it is. and I told them, why don't you go up to David Rockefeller, who set plans in motions to help ensnare and kill most of the human race through being chairman and founder of a number of hugely powerful and influential think tanks, and tell him to think peaceful thoughts and see what he says. I can guarantee
send
you.
him the Course in Miracle book or something. Right, like he's going to respond to that.
And he's not going to suddenly stop trying to kill and enslave people. I mean, no offense to this person, but grow up. Maybe you need to have your life's work stolen or entire family executed in the streets or something before you realize that the world isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Me, I look at facts and evidence. Granted, I may not have bothered had I not been arrested on trumped-up charges and had my website's name stolen once upon a time, but there you go. Foolish is the gazelle that ignores the roar of a lion and stays still, thinking he just wants to be friends.
Yeah, there's that. There's this whole love and light movement that lives in this almost fantasy world. These people scare me a lot because what they're promoting. One of the big myths out there that I see right now is this endless expectation of Nasara, and the idea that somehow or another there's going to be this global reset on the economy that's going to benefit the common man. I don't see that coming. Do you?
I got a chip on this too, Randy, and thank you for bringing that up, because I see a lot of these types of spin-off groups about this reset, and everybody's going to get paid millions of dollars, and all you got to do is buy a bunch of whatever currencies or whatever, and then invest it in all this. And it's one promise after another, and it's not coming through, and we're seeing that the global economy is just moving further and further into recession and depression. And so I don't think that people should really be putting all their eggs in that basket, and people really should start doing some serious research on how the economy is working and where they're trying to take it. And I don't know, at this point I have to see some very convincing evidence that somehow this is going to happen. We're going to have everybody will benefit from it. In my opinion, the reset will be the initiation of what they've long wanted, which
global
is
currency.
The global bank.
Yeah,
exactly. Global banking system, global governance, global everything you can imagine. So
yeah, I don't see it as anything more than the next level of getting screwed for the average person, because the people who control the economy are not going to let go. Look, we're running on fumes right now in terms of any real value, but then there never really was any real value except from the standpoint of the expansion of human capital, which are the slaves that drive this machine. And that's the part that people don't get, because, again, this goes into this whole dialectic materialism that has pervaded the culture for almost 100 years now. I mean, it's a Marxist idea, and it is so inbred into the culture now that I don't think people can disentangle from it until they consciously begin to understand what their motivations are.
And they'll throw you
It's kind of infecting our own movement to a degree, and one thing that's actually kind of frustrating me is truthers and people who know what's going on blaming those who don't know what's going on for not knowing what's going on, as if you knew it all along. It's frickin' stupid. I mean, if slaves on a plantation were forbidden to learn to read or write, is it their fault for being illiterate? Likewise, if governments and corporations deliberately dumb down the population, can you blame most people for being stupid? I don't think you really
And yet I see a lot of this, and I see some very, I guess you would call them smart and potentially leaders, but their level of cynicism towards the average person is that they're idiots and that they don't know anything and they're not capable, and it's their fault that they're ignorant. And I struggle with this because I think for each one of us here tonight, wherever we are on the spectrum right now, waking up has been a very gradual process. It's got its jumps and starts. There's moments of shock. There's times when you have epiphanies. But this is a process. And you cannot blame people who have lived in a system where they didn't know that they were inside of a system. I guess it's Plato's cave all over again. But the cynicism directed to the so-called sheeple out there is not serving us well in terms of getting a message out.
Exactly. I mean, it's just disrespectful to call them sheeple. That's why I prefer to call them slave scum. And
that's so much better. Yes.
Well, my opinion is that basically everybody needs to be arrested for no good reason by corrupt cops and beaten and traumatized. All right? That'll shake your naivete in a hurry.
Well, and the other thing too is like you got to think of it as there's ignorance. You know, like the word ignore is right in there. So, you know, willful ignorance, meaning you are aware that there are things that need to be paid attention to. You are aware that there is a whole world of knowledge at your fingertips. But you've willfully said, no, I don't want to look at that, even though it's really happening. I don't want to look at it because it's just not fun to look at, and therefore I'm going to choose to put the fingers in the ears, cover the eyes, and shut my mouth. And then there's that sort of more of a nescient kind of mentality where people are just not aware and they're kind of that, they're just gullible. They might be a bit naive or they just weren't educated, but they mean well, and you will reach that. You will say to those people successfully, here's some information to look at about the quality of your food and the price, the reason why your prices keep going up. And they will take that information, they will research it, and they will do their own research, and then they'll come back and go, oh my God, I had no idea, right? They came from a state of not knowing to now starting to become aware. Whereas those other people, no matter how much evidence, how much information you give them to show them a certain thing, they will constantly fighting it down and shutting it down and desperately firing up some article to debunk that as fast as they can. Because what you're suggesting is that they need to popping, and nobody really likes that. So we need to, I agree with you, not just everybody, oh, you don't agree with me, I'm just going to walk away from you, you're just a sheep, or you're nothing, you're ignorant. You know, we shouldn't become condescending. But there's also a need for people to be put in their place, and everybody, they're just coming at you as an adversary for no reason.
Can I explain this? You're breaking up as well a little bit there, David. But,
sorry, yes.
I think it was Jonathan Alenoff, the maker of Core of Corruption. He said that the reason people don't listen to you is because they don't see you as a teacher. Okay, so he used Israel as an example, and somebody was like criticizing the Palestinians or the Israelis, and he goes, okay, first of all, have you been there? No? Then I have. Okay, so you don't know what you're talking about, and I do. And it kind of puts them in their spot where they have to kind of either admit their ignorance or expose their arrogance. You see what I'm saying? If somebody admits their ignorance, there's a reason for you to stay because you can help them out of it. If somebody exposes the fact that they're so arrogant that they can't admit it, walk away, because you ain't going to get more than 2 steps in their line of thought.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And I see so many truthers actually getting themselves this term, banging your head against a brick wall. Everybody uses that. Dude, stop banging your head, okay? Go find a drill or a sledgehammer or something more effective, you know. If it ain't working now, it ain't gonna work. And all you're gonna do is hurt yourself. Frickin' idiots. And actually, one of the things that's actually kind of personal for me is a friend of mine who admitted to me in a private chat that he thinks that the New World Order is right, that people are too stupid, and that he agrees that 90% of them should be exterminated. And that for somebody who knows about the New World Order, knows how evil it is, knows about the spiritual contamination of all of our beings, to say that it almost made me have a crisis of faith in myself, not just in him. Because there's some way of rolling over sort of thing. You can... What was it Dante said? He said, if you look into hell, sometimes hell stares back at you. And it reminds me of what Jordan Maxwell told me once, is that if you want to look into the stuff, you will get what you pay for. Don't go into thinking about researching into the global pedophile rings and the mass extermination and mass surveillance and all of these kind of things and expect that you will be unaffected by it. It will destroy your life. It will destroy your current perception of reality, regardless of how warped it is. Knowing the truth is a way of destroying everything that you hold dear, everything that you once believed in, because you will wind up finding out that it was absolutely untrue. And you kind of have to admit to yourself that you don't know everything, and you always have more to learn. I had an old saying when I was a lot younger, is the person who thinks he knows everything clearly knows nothing. The person who says that he probably knows little obviously knows enough.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that process, Vinny, because we do this constantly. We kind of jokingly were talking about no mercy in my dojo, but this is why we have no mercy in the dojo, ladies and gentlemen, is because...
Can we play the clip again? Because frick, that's funny.
Right after my point is that if you are going to want to change and grow and become stronger as a person, whether it's physically, mentally, or spiritually, or whatever, you first need to be broken down in so many different ways and deprogrammed. And what we have to do is go through that process. And it can be stressful on your body. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have to go into that. But the result will always shine through 100% of the time if you put the time, work, and effort into it. And it's just like this pursuit of knowledge and this and participating in this time in which we live. That's what I look at this as. There is no movement.
I like that.
It's a participation, right? If you think about it, we're participating as men, as women, as people in the times in which we live and facing the issues that face humanity at this time. And if you really want to get into the true answers, it's going to take a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's going to take a lot of work. But at the other side of it, there is the success. And I think if we applied that grit and that determination and that vigor, then we could really make some headway. So just wanted to share that because I thought, man, that's exactly it. They work very well together.
I don't know about this, Joe.
There is no fear in this dojo.
Joe, we don't even know what a dojo is.
There's no mercy in this dojo.
Joe, why don't you take it down a notch?
No mercy.
Now, what this reminds me of is one of the people I'm producing on radio now, Paul Carruthers. There was this dude named Alan Hubbard who's a billionaire, basically, and he just lived in the same house that he's lived in since the 70s. The only new thing he had was his kidney dialysis machine, very humble dude. And for defending him, Paul received so much abuse, sabotage in the media and otherwise. And what occurred to him afterwards, and you only get these realizations after the fact, is that you don't know how much you can take. You don't know how much bravery you possess until it is required of you.
Yeah, that's so key. I mean, we all possess so much potential, and we all do. I know this. I know this because I've proven it to myself when I had next to zero belief in myself and confidence to the point where I'm at now. And I know so many people that have gone down that journey. I've been honored to be a part of that process for some of the people that I have the honor of teaching and working with and sharing with. And I see it happen all the time. People who thought they couldn't do something or who doubted themselves or who were afraid of their own shadow, they make a full 360-degree turn and they come around and they're the most confident, warm, happy, aware, determined people, and they're totally different. So anybody can do this, and it is contained within all of us. And I just urge people to don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt your instincts. Trust your instincts. Trust your intuition. And also balance that out with the intellectual pursuit of knowledge so that you have a balanced way of looking at yourself and the world. And that's really where I think the bottom line comes in.
Yeah. Personally, I just kind of like, I'll come up with all these crazy ideas or what have you. And the first question I ask about the idea that I've come up with is, has it been done before? And if the answer's no, then that's the only reason I need to in order to do it. You know?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to park it for this time. Gosh, guys, the time goes by so fast. 2 hours went by like nothing. And it's been a good meetup. It's been good to reconnect with both of you. And let's go out, giving out your websites and any vitals you want to tell about yourselves and where people can find you.
You go first, Dave.
All right. Well, if you want to check out my radio show, it airs Monday nights, it's 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on truthfrequencyradio.com. If you want more information about modern knowledge, what we're doing in Canada, and we do have a subscription platform available for people around the world. If you want to look at the production that we have, the videos that we have, the interviews, the presentations that we got, and we're adding more all the time, check it out at modernknowledge.ca. Our next event we'll be bringing Michael Tessarian to Canada for the first time. He's going to be talking about his new thesis, The Female Illuminati, which is basically a continuation of a series he's been doing for many years on the deeper aspects of the orders and occult elements that run the world. So he's going to be coming to Canada to share that, and we're going to be documenting it, live streaming it, lots of exciting stuff. We're also in talks with Alex Gray and Nassim Harriman for some possible visitation to Canada as well. So we've got some great projects ahead of us here, and that's modernknowledge.ca is where you can find out more about that.
Vincent?
Well, I'm Vinny Eastwood. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question. Eastwood as in go ahead, make my news. And my website is thevinnyeastwoodshow.com because there's only one Vinny. It's me. And I survive basically 100% on listener contributions and have done so since 2010. And since 2012, it's actually managed to pay my bills. and before then, my wife kind of did, yeah. But now I'm helping her out as well, so it's all good. So go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com, and there are PayPal buttons on there for the international listeners. And if you happen to be tuning in from New Zealand, there is a Kiwi bank account number there as well. And I ask for subscriptions of $5 a month just to basically keep a roof over my head, pay for the internet and gas and food in my belly and what have you. And that's all I need. I only need to be able to survive in order to contribute to humanity's continued survival. Thank you.
Don't forget to support independent media. I'm Randy Maugans. This is the Liberty Beacon Media Network. You can find me at offplanetradio.com. Good night, everybody. That ends programming. We'll be back on Friday when we have Stephen Roberts with Cancel the Cabal and the Allison Bricker Show, followed by Off Planet Radio at 9 p.m. Take care and good night.